once you've truly looked into the abyss, you get a fit of the giggles. Our family was a very unhappy, dysfunctional family. I have to hasten to state that, life didn't change just when my father died. It would change as soon as I was born. It was always going to be odd. My mum and dad pretty much hated each other and let the family know about it too in no uncertain manner. So that kind of thing is always in progress. You're never really sure where that's going to take you mentally. As David Tibet said to me years and years ago, I think it was when I was living with him in 1986, and we were very, very close, and he said to me that this art has probably saved you. If you were doing just what would be seen as a normal 9-to-5 job, you probably would have some real psychological problems. I was born in 1956 in a southern suburb of London, in what would be, I suppose, described in America as a white working-class ghetto. It's a council estate in the UK. My father was a career RAF, Royal Air Force guy, who after leaving after the war, he'd been in the service before the war, joined what became BOAC, which is now British Airways. So he was always involved in aeronautics. But then, I suppose in his late 40s, my age now, he suffered the first of his heart attacks, which disabled him from work any further, and that was the case until he died of his third heart attack when he was 56. So he grew up fairly poor. He died a week after my 14th birthday. I'm one of 4. I have a younger sister and an older brother and an older stepsister. My father's first wife was killed by a V-2 rocket during the Blitz on London. That's the beginning of where I am. I grew up in that environment. It was a very militaristic environment. My brother did go on to join the RAF himself, the Royal Air Force. I was destined for that. At the age of 18, I took off hitching around Europe for several months, dropped lots and lots of acid, and came back a changed individual. Most of my friends up until the age of 11 were locals, but I was one of 3 people that gained what they called the 11 plus, which was an examination before you went to senior school or high school, that got me out of the estate. So it was only me and 2 other people managed to get to a better school rather than the estate school. So most of my friends then became outside the area, and it was a dangerous area. So the new friends I went on to make at the new school, their parents really didn't even like letting their children come and visit me. So that was the situation. There was a gang going around with sawn off shotguns, baseball bats, Land Rovers. If you didn't fit in, you were beaten up badly. Your family were terrorized. A lot of the area was based on crime as well, which I later got into or involved in petty crime. It was a way of existing and surviving. During my early years at school, which I loathed, my infant and junior school days up until the age of 11, I'd run away 2 or 3 times, and I had learning difficulties. I eventually had to have special learning lessons to read, which I didn't manage until I was about 9. And from there on I took off. I skipped the Janet and John type of books. I went straight to the encyclopedias and history books, and that's what I was fascinated with. Certainly I'm not sitting down thinking about what a miserable 5-year-old I was, but it must come out somewhere, because that 5-year-old is living in a 48-year-old man's body these days, and those experiences I experienced today and tomorrow and yesterday are all coloured by what that 5-year-old was experiencing. experiencing. I realise that probably more and more as I get older, and I've always been self-analytical, but I've become more so of late. It's possibly just a period I'm going through for a variety of reasons. I had bronze aircraft of Spitfires that my dad had modelled whilst he was rehabilitating in hospital during those years. So it was really destined that we were probably going to join the RAF, his sons, which my brother did, disastrously so. This is not a good idea to try and follow in your father's footsteps at the best of times, and he wasn't really cut out for that. Whether or not, if my father had lived by the time I was 18, the pressure would have been on for me to have gone in, I don't know, but my dad died a week after my 14th birthday, and I was really sort of set on an independent course from there on. So you're surrounded by war memorabilia, and I had a natural attraction to a lot of it. But what perturbed my father was I had a natural attraction to the side he'd been fighting against, which up until the time I started buying my first bits of military memorabilia with my paper round money, so I'd be about 12, 13. He sort of conceded eventually. He freaked out with the first thing I bought, which was a Wehrmacht German Army summer issue tunic, which I kept hidden in the sort of shed at the bottom of the garden for some time until he found it and went crazy and insisted on me taking it back to the place I bought it from. But because my obsession or attraction to these things was so genuine, eventually he accompanied me up to Edgware Road in North London, which is filled with a lot of antique shops, and we found the oldest, rustiest, worst conditioned German helmet that could possibly be found. I think that the story was they just dug it out of a field in France only recently. Very poor condition, completely covered in rust, no inner, no paintwork at all. And he said, well, if you can refurbish that to usable condition, then I'll be convinced of your sort of keenness on the subject. So I did. It was a very nice piece. So I repainted it, got new decals to put on the side, and sort of put a new liner in, and then he died. But he was convinced by then I was obsessed with the subject matter. I mean, my brother's bedroom and mine the ceilings were covered in model aircraft, whilst my brother tended to have sort of the Spitfires and Hurricanes and Lancaster bombers. I tended to have the German side of things, and it evened itself out in the end. My dad sort of was reconciled to the fact I was slightly different from the rest of the family. I was the demon seed come to haunt him.